before the Big Bang, it's an interesting question because that's...
I'll just repeat, there's no data to base anything on, right? It's an open question at present.
Oh, that's a really big question.
The documentary, The Flux, Eternal, Infinite and Immortal, is a personal and real experience, within the empirical knowledge of the unknown. Empirical knowledge is information acquired by observation or experimentation. Scientists record and analyze this data. The process is a central part of the scientific method. The empirical knowledge is immersed beyond philosophy, religion, and science. That is always only based, a dogmatic and limited barrier of human rational view. Beyond the unknowable beginning of the universe. It is what we call the flux, eternal, infinite and immortal. An undeniable singularity. Eternal is one that has no beginning and no end. Its has been forever, it's forever. Infinite is one that has no limits, cannot limit where it began and how far extends. Immortal is the one who was born but has no end. He never dies.
There's nothing wrong before, we just don't have any data. I don't mind going into negative time, I have no problem with that. I don't mind resetting where the 0 point is. Time is just, where you put the 0 is arbitrary, as it continues to be this day with calendars. And so the starting point is just where you want to put it. And so right now, a pretty good starting point is the Big Bang. We don't know how to put it earlier than that. But if the day comes where a whole new kind of understanding of the universe reveals to us before that, I don't have any problems pushing the 0 point back or just counting into negative years.
The idea that I think most physicists or cosmologists buy into at the moment is that gravity can have two manifestations. The usual form of gravity is the attractive version. You drop something toward the Earth and it moves downward because the Earth and the object pull on each other. That's the ordinary gravity that we experience every day of our lives. But Einstein's equations actually allow gravity to also be repulsive. It can push outward as opposed to just pulling inward. And this is something that we have never experienced because the gravity created by a rocky object like the Earth is always the attractive variety. The gravity created by the sun, again, a compact object, is always the attractive variety. But Einstein's math shows that if you don't have a rocky object that's isolated in space, but rather energy that is uniformly spread through a region of space, that kind of entity yields repulsive gravity. If the very early universe, if it was filled with a uniform bath of this energy, we call it the inflaton field, the name doesn't matter, but if it was filled with that energy, it would have been subject to repulsive gravity. What does repulsive gravity do? Pushes everything apart, causes everything to rush outward. So the bang of the Big Bang may have been a spark of repulsive gravity operating with a tiny region of space that pushed everything apart.
That produces variations in the speed of light. You can kind of create a cycle in which we have big variations in C, which cause big variations in the energy in the cosmological constant, which generate a Big Bang. Then you wait a bit until the Big Bang dies down, and the cosmological constant resurfaces, and you just start the cycle.
All matter possibilities are not made of particles or waves, but are made of fragments of energy. Within the flux, eternal, infinite and immortal. A perceptively bridge between the uncertainty chaos to a certainty purpose. Conduct all beings of light as co-authors immersed in a flow of constant cosmic photonic evolution. Within the omniverse. An inertial format to be manifested throughout the flux. Eternal, infinite, and immortal. That triggers all possibilities in motion for a precise achievement.
What is it, life? What makes it different from just matter? Everything, living or not, is just chemicals made from atoms. These fish and the water the fish are in are just soups of atoms. But what makes the fish alive and not the water is how the atoms are organized, by a special kind of molecule, and you know this because you learned about it in high school, DNA. The double helix molecule that houses the chemical alphabet of A's and C's and T's and G's, which in different combinations can make a flower, or a frog, or you. Every living creature has its code that makes it grow, reproduce, and change. DNA turns dust into life.
As light, we are not humans. We just came for a temporary human experience. And we will return as light. All things are merely instruments to the manifestation of the omniverse, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. For the birth of the omni-being. Omniverse, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, omni-being, astral projection, telepathy, divination, materialization, teleportation, levitation, pyrokinesis, energy medicine, retrocognition, precognition, psychic surgery, psychokinesis, psychometry, remote viewing, clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairsentience. The drop doesn't have to become the ocean. It already is the ocean. Osho. Fibonacci. Sequence in nature.
The sequence begins with the numbers 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and continues indefinitely. Each number is obtained by adding the last two digits together. If we were to take a perfect or golden rectangle, break it down into smaller squares based on Fibonacci's sequence, and divide each with an arc, the patterns begin to take shape. We begin to see Fibonacci's spiral. The spiral in and of itself is insignificant. Its importance is revealed in where we find it. Take, for example, the sunflower. The display of its florets are in perfect spirals of 55, 34, and 21, the sequence of Fibonacci. The fruitlets of the pineapple create this same spiral based on the sequence. The pine cone does the same. As currents move through the ocean and the tide rolls onto the shore, the waves that bring in the tide curve into a spiral that can be mathematically diagrammed onto a plot at the points 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and 55. Buds on trees, sand dollars, starfish, petals on flowers, and especially the nautilus shell are formed with this exact same blueprint. With each segment of growth, the nautilus adds to itself one more value on Fibonacci's scale. This blueprint can be seen around us on a small scale every day, but the greatest example of all is directly above our heads. At an average of 100,000 light years across, even the spiral of the galaxies above us are formed with the exact design that the tiny shell is formed.
DNA transcription.
What you are about to see is DNA's most extraordinary secret: how a simple code is turned into flesh and blood. It begins with a bundle of factors assembling at the start of a gene. A gene is simply a length of DNA instructions stretching away to the left. The assembled factors trigger the first phase of the process, reading off the information that will be needed to make the protein. Everything is ready to roll. 3, 2, 1, go.
What is the intersection between technology, art, and science? Curiosity and wonder. Because it drives us to explore. Because we're surrounded by things we can't see. And I love to use film to take us on a journey through portals of time and space, to make the invisible visible. Because what that does, it expands our horizons, it transforms our perception, it opens our minds, and it touches our heart. So here are some scenes from my 3D IMAX film, Mysteries of the Unseen World. There is movement which is too slow for our eyes to detect. And time-lapse makes us discover and broaden our perspective of life. We can see how organisms emerge and grow. How a vine survives by creeping from the forest floor to look at the sunlight. And on the grand scale, time-lapse allows us to see our planet in motion. We can view not only the vast sweep of nature, but the restless movement of humanity. Each streaking dot represents a passenger plane, and by turning air traffic data into time-lapse imagery, we can see something that's above us constantly but invisible. The vast network of air travel over the United States. We can do the same thing with ships at sea. We can turn data into a time-lapse view of a global economy in motion. And decades of data give us a view of our entire planet as a single organism, sustained by currents circulating throughout the oceans and by clouds swirling through the atmosphere, pulsing with lightning, crowned by the aurora borealis. It may be the ultimate time-lapse image. The anatomy of Earth brought to life.
Dr. Masaru Emoto and water consciousness. His work demonstrated that water is shaped by environment, thoughts, and emotions. In nature, nothing is created, nothing is lost, everything is transformed. Lavoisier. Those who don't wonder about the contingency of their existence, or the contingency of the world's existence, are mentally deficient. Arthur Schopenhauer. The life of Earth, clocked as 1 hours day. If you took all of life on Earth and you compressed it into 1 24-hour day. Anatomically modern man shows up at 4 seconds before midnight. Cave paintings at 1 second before midnight. We've been playing at civilization for a fraction of a second.
It's really easy to forget that we're just monkeys with clothes. If you took all of life on Earth and you compressed it into one 24-hour day. Anatomically, modern man shows up at 4 seconds before midnight. Cave paintings at 1 second before midnight. We've been playing at civilization for a fraction of a second. Everything is going into exponential change, from education to quantum computing to cryptocurrency to transport to macroeconomics to geopolitics to climate crises to everything. It's breaking our brains. We're overwhelmed, we're collapsing in grief. It does feel that the handrails, the things that we used to look to for stability and security, have just evaporated. If we've experienced a collapse in meaning, how do we go about restoring it?
Is there an irreducible complexity in the universe? Is there an intelligent design? Is there a flux, eternal, infinite and immortal, immersed within the universe? Why does the universe exist? Why do you exist? Where do we come from? What are we? What are you made of? What is the purpose of your existence? Where are we going? Where will you be after this existence? What will be the purpose of your next existence? Behind it all is surely an idea so simple, so beautiful, that when we grasp it, in a decade, a century, or a millennium, we will all say to each other, how could it have been otherwise? How could we have been so stupid? John Archibald Wheeler. We invite you to immerse, entirely within this free manifestation of perpetual motion.